part of a union because you have to have a voice.
Welcome to Union Talk. I'm Randi Weingarten.
So, look, I want to say thank you to Amy and Raquel and Jessica. I mean, these are our members. These are you in the delegates. And I also want to say thank you to our hosts, the Texas AFT. Yeah. The Houston Federation of Teachers. You saw some of those amazing Houston public servants and Texas public servants, including Zeph Capo, who are not going to quit. And if they're not going to quit, we're not going to quit. I understand that Anise Parker, the former mayor of the city of Houston, is with us today. Thank you, Anise. I also want to thank, and look, you saw a couple of them already. I mean, really, Dolores Horta here, amazing. But I want to thank our speakers. Sean Fain will be here later in the week. We have President Biden was supposed to come on Thursday. He may still come. We may have a surprise guest by video or otherwise. We don't know. But I want to thank our speakers, our students, like those amazing San Antonio dancers, the union staff who has done, look, how many plagues can you fight in the same week? And I'm sorry of all the delays for all the folks who have been delayed, but they are trying their best to get everyone in. I also really want to thank the staff of the convention center and of our hotels for doing everything they can to make our lives who they are. I have two more thank yous. One is to all of you for being unionists, for understanding this movement and this moment. And the last person I want to thank is my wife. You notice she's doing double duty today. She is retiring in the next few days as the senior rabbi of the largest LGBTQ synagogue in the world. She started 32 years ago as the first openly gay, probably faith leader, certainly rabbi in the world. And I don't know where she is. Oh, there she is. This is giving back what she gave to me a few weeks ago. She, at one of the retirement honorings, tributes for her, she got up and said, it's really not easy to be the wife of a rabbi. And let me just say, it is really not easy to be the wife of a union leader, particularly me. Thank you, Sharon. I owe you big time. So, we've been talking about books a lot, but I'll get to that in a sec. As you can imagine, my speech changed a lot in the last few days. But I do want to first and foremost thank President Biden. I don't have tissues with me. I should, unfortunately. He's been a great president. He's a great public servant. What he did this week is incredible patriotism. And we owe him that debt of gratitude. And then I'll get to some books. And of course, And some of you have heard me this year. You know I'm very fond of this book, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I don't think they've banned Dickens yet. Not yet, right? But there is a paragraph. The whole paragraph is amazing, but I'm just going to read a line from it. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. Now, these words were written more than 165 years ago, but today feels very Dickinsonian. Maybe I should say Dickensian. Today, our union has never been stronger, and a revival of labor activism is sweeping the nation. Wages are up. Inflation has cooled. The Biden-Harris administration has created more jobs than any other in history. And America's economy is the strongest in the world, powered by America's workers. Yet, and you know this as well as I do, fear, anxiety, and despair have taken hold across our country, driven by disinformation, shifting demographics, loneliness, and a pervasive feeling that the American dream is slipping further and further out of reach. Our students and our patients are coming to us with greater and greater needs. Academic freedom and the right to peacefully protest have come under attack. From floods to famines to fires, climate catastrophes are worsening. Hate crimes, particularly anti-Muslim and anti-Jewish hate, are climbing. And gun violence still haunts us. Let's be crystal clear. Political violence is never justified. Not on January 6th, and not against political candidates. And while the calls to condemn political violence were encouraging, billionaires and demagogues are still capitalizing on fear to stoke division, to fund public education and public services, decimate healthcare, and dismantle our democracy, all to cement their power. And the Supreme Court's extremist majority is aiding and abetting them, rewriting the Constitution in terrifying ways. Operatives like Christopher Rufo, who work on behalf of billionaires like Betsy DeVos, openly admit their scheme: create distrust in public education and in their political enemies so that they can enact their extremist agenda. Now, these, for those of you who have been here and with us for more than a nanosecond, these are not the first unscrupulous operatives we've faced. We've been outspent, bet against, and had our union's obituary written more times than we can count. Remember this one? Michelle Rhee tried to sweep us away. And then there was Scott Walker, who tried to legislate us out of existence. Billionaires backed the Janus case to try to bankrupt us. A red wave was supposed to crest in 2022 and wash us away. Mike Pompeo tried to vilify us, first claiming that America's school teachers teach filth, and then calling me the most dangerous person in the world. Wait, hear this. More dangerous than Vladimir Putin. And why? Because I'm your elected leader. But we're still here. In fact, we're thriving. And I guess that old saying is true. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in our case, my friends, bigger. The AFT had 1.4 million members when I became president in 2008. Since then, we've been through 2 recessions, 1 pandemic, and all the crap I just described. And despite everything that has been thrown at us since our last convention, the AFT has added 185 new units and more than 80,000 new members, and today the AFT is 1.8 million members strong. So, who are the newest members of the AFT? 4 airport ground crew in Bangor, Maine, and 450 TAs at Brown University, 9 LPNs at Peace Health in Oregon, and 910 diagnostic imaging techs in Michigan, bus drivers in Farmington, Illinois, and faculty and staff at universities in Kansas and Hawaii. Healthcare workers at Planned Parenthood in Wisconsin, librarians in Ohio, doctors in Maryland, charter school educators in Massachusetts, and paraprofessionals in Minnesota. Yeah, 185 new units. And thousands more who just want a better life, including, after a 50-year fight, the 27,000 educators and school staffs in Fairfax County, Virginia. Why do they join the AFT? Because AFT believes in improving people's lives, because AFT believes in our communities and our country, and because AFT believes in you. You. The growth is essential. America's middle class has risen and fallen as union membership has risen and fallen. That's why we, indeed the entire AFL-CIO, are working to grow. Our unions help us win better wages and benefits. Our unions give us real voice at work. It's how the UFT, I know they're in the House, negotiated. I just didn't want you to think I forgot you. It's how the UFT negotiated groundbreaking paid parental leave and lower class sizes. It's how Cleveland got their new policy prohibiting students from using cell phones during the school day. UTLA won sustainable community schools, and the Chicago Teachers Union is negotiating for healthy, safe, green schools. And we started this last year, and we have these at the back of the room for all of you, because it is about the value of belonging. So much that we do and that you do to try and create a better life for all. Now, you're never on your own in our union, especially during life's hardest moments, like when we lost 2 members of our union family from Farmingdale, New York. Band director Gina Pelletier and retired teacher Beatrice Ferrari were chaperoning a band trip when their bus crashed, killing them and injuring several students. Chaperoning, coaching, advising clubs. Our members perform so many unsung labors of love. Their memories are a blessing. And thank you, Cordelia Anthony, for being here, the president of our Farmingdale local. And look, you just heard from Amy, who is one of my personal heroes. Amid the surging culture wars, the AFT made a promise to defend any member like Amy Donofrio who gets in trouble for teaching honest history or meeting the needs of our students or our patients. So many of our members feel alone and bullied. So many are walking on eggshells every day. So, in addition to Amy's case, in May, we won an important case when a New Hampshire law designed to stoke fear about teaching history and having any discussion about gender, race, and identity was ruled unconstitutional. I thought I saw them. Two of the plaintiffs are with us today, Ryan Richmond and John Doobie. Thank you very, very much. Then there's Karen Martyr, a teacher at Hillcrest High School in Queens, New York. Days after the October 7th Hamas massacre, Karen posted a photo of herself on Facebook holding a sign reading, "I stand with Israel." Shortly afterward, there was a riot at Karen's school targeting her and calling for her to be fired. Now, Karen's a great teacher. Karen had a choice to transfer to another school. But she returned to Hillcrest, and with a Palestinian friend and fellow teacher, she met with her students. She talked to her students. She used her experience to model how to counter hate, how to combat intolerance, how to debunk misinformation, and discuss challenging topics. That is what teachers do, and thank you, Karen, for being here today. There she is. We believe a better life for all is possible, and we act on that belief through our Real Solutions campaigns, fighting for our communities, fighting for each other, fighting for our values, fighting for the kind of country and the kind of world we want. So remember, during COVID, we celebrated healthcare workers as the heroes they are. Yet many healthcare corporations betrayed them, failing to protect the safety and health of nurses, technicians, doctors, and other health professionals. We didn't just get angry, we acted. Through our Code Red campaign, we're fighting to combat burnout and violence against healthcare workers and to improve patient care, and we are winning. New safe staffing laws in Oregon, Connecticut, and Washington, and new contracts in New York and New Jersey. It's amazing what you all have done. We're targeting private equity conglomerates that buy up hospitals and bleed them dry without regard for patients or healthcare providers. And then let's go to our support staff. Schools and colleges would not function without paraprofessionals and support staff. Okay, do this with me. They clean it, cook it, fix it, drive it. But too often, they are denied a living wage, affordable health care, safe working conditions, paid family leave, or meaningful professional development. Yeah is right. And while some locals have made progress through bargaining, we need to nationalize this fight. So, we're calling for a Bill of Rights for support staff in schools and colleges, and we're working with members of Congress to pass it. Speaking of raises, teachers need them too. And so do public employees. They protect our communities and environment, and they make government more effective. But an understaffing crisis is stretching public employees to the breaking point and endangering lives. In New York State, for example, dire staff shortages have affected crucial services like the Child Abuse Hotline. Correction officers in Kansas have had to work mandatory double shifts for months on end. In Colorado, the shortage of nursing staff in state facilities has resulted in patients with mental health conditions being housed in prisons. So, using the new report from AFT public employees, we are launching a campaign this week to combat all of this. As you can see, we've been a little busy. Speaking of colleagues who need our help, let's talk higher education. We're fighting for investment and the freedom to teach, and we're fighting against precarity and the endless attacks. Yeah, our new higher ed campaign is about access, academic freedom, and affordability for all students, and ending the adjunctification that higher ed faculty face. And I will repeatedly say the following: expression, including that with which one disagrees, must be protected for a democracy to thrive. As we all know, the Hamas-Israel conflict has tested this. But we can and we must fight hate, ensure people on campuses are safe, and protect nonviolent speech. That's what our members from Rutgers, Northwestern, and the University of California did. When their college presidents testified before Congress, they were there to make sure the presidents acknowledged their responsibility to protect the right to peacefully protest and the rights of students and faculty to be safe. We're fighting back against the addictive and predatory practices of social media companies, demanding that they protect, not prey on children. And we're focusing on artificial intelligence. AI can be a powerful tool, but there must be strong guardrails like the AFT recently laid out. We're also imagining how to harness its potential with both Share My Lessons, AI Educator Brain, and AFT Innovation Fund grants. The fight for real solutions don't end there. And I know it makes my speech longer. I know some of you are betting on it. I know it makes it longer to do and to talk about all these, but it is really important for our members to see themselves in our work and in our fights. So, you heard from Dr. St. Paul already about the fight we have fought to have the federal government keep its promise to teachers, nurses, and other public service workers for student debt relief. Let's be clear, Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos refused. 99% of public service workers who tried to get debt relief were rejected. It's why the AFT sued DeVos and the student loan giant Navient for conspiring against borrowers. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have kept that promise. In 3 years, close to 1 million public service workers have had $69 billion in loans forgiven. And in terms of our members have saved an average of $60,000 a member. I hear from AFT members all the time, many of whom have participated in the AFT debt clinics, and many of you who want to create them, we want to help you. But I've heard from people. They can now buy a home, start a family, send their own kids to college, and retire with dignity. But the student loan system remains dangerously vulnerable to the whims of predatory student loan companies, first Navient and now Mohila, the latest company to line its pockets while refusing borrowers the relief they're owed. So this morning, as we were here, the AFT went to court, filing a consumer protection lawsuit against Mohila. We won't stop until every borrower gets the forgiveness they deserve. Public schools, you've heard this all morning, are essential to our children's future and to our democracy. Every public school should be a place where families want to send their children, educators want to work, and all students thrive. That's our North Star, and it guides our K-12 campaign, Real Solutions for Kids and Communities. We have a vision of what schools can be. It starts with helping our kids love reading. It's why we invest in tools to help teachers be fluent in all aspects of the teaching of reading, and why we invest in books. More than a decade ago, the AFT and First Book joined forces to give books to children who might otherwise not have their own. And I'm so glad that First Book is here with us today. Thank you, Kyle. So, and you saw it in the video already, as others have banned books, more than 700 AFT locals have organized hundreds of community book giveaways across the country. And this May, we hit an amazing milestone. We gave away our 10th millionth book. Experiential learning should be standard in our schools. Hands-on learning, debates, robotics, science fairs, service learning, student-led projects, and career and technical education. And as the Biden-Harris administration has remade the economy, the AFT and our affiliates have created transformative pathways to secure those new good jobs, many times right out of high school, including in healthcare and advanced manufacturing. Experiential learning is a sea change in public education, and the federal accountability system needs to change with it. No single test can measure what kids need to learn and be able to do to succeed in life. Projects, portfolios, presentations tell us so much more, and they resonate with students. So it is well past time to end high-stakes testing as the basis of federal education law. In a world in which teachers are expected to do it all. And when I say teachers, I mean teachers and all our support staff. In a world where educators are expected to do it all, and many families feel like they are on their own, we need to expand community schools to meet these needs, to make school the oasis in a very broken world, with wraparound services, health services, and after-school enrichment. It's time to make these schools the norm, not the exception. So none of this happens without adequate funding and without the amazing educators we all have the honor of representing and who are in this room. But now, School privatization is putting that funding and even the survival of public education in America at risk. The school voucher idea first took root in the 1950s after the Brown v. Board decision, when politicians in many southern states introduced voucher proposals so white families could evade school integration. By the 1990s, vouchers became a fixation of the religious right. And since 2010, the American Federation for Children, I did not make that name up, that is the name of Betsy DeVos's group, they have spent $250 million to push privatization and now boast that her spending has led to 25+ billion in government funding being diverted from public schools to private alternatives. Just grok that number. Proponents of vouchers used to argue that they were a way for low-income and minority families to transfer out of low-performing schools. But research shows that vouchers, on average, negatively affect achievement. And today, vouchers subsidize wealthy families who already send their kids to private and religious schools. Privatizers fund those giveaways by defunding and destabilizing public schools. Look at the fight here in Texas. I know Zeph talked about it a bit, but I want to just repeat it. Under Zeph Capo's leadership, Texas AFT fueled a coalition of parents, pastors, rural Republican, and urban Democratic legislators. They defeated vouchers not once, not twice, but 5 times. But did Texas Governor Abbott accept the will of the people? No! He declared war not just on public education, but on anyone who supported public education, including spending millions in primaries to defeat the Republicans who stood up for kids in public schools. And for all of you who live in states like California, Illinois, and New York, and you think it can't happen here, these billionaires and extremists have their sights set on you too. And that's why I'm so glad for the pro-public education campaigns our state federations in Montana and New York are leading. Why? Why do these extremists want to destroy public education? They fear what we do. The teaching of reason, of critical thinking, of honest history, of pluralism, because their brand of greed, of power, of privilege cannot survive in a democracy of diverse, educated citizens. They oppose democracy itself. The extremists want to cement their power and prevent others from having it. So they're going after education opportunity, economic opportunity, equal opportunity. They're going after the legitimacy of elections. And in case you think I'm exaggerating, the enemies of democracy have helpfully written down exactly what they intend to do. It's called Project 2025. Now, I got to take a drink of water before I tell you what's in there. It's a 900-page extremist wish list coordinated by the Heritage Foundation that they intend to implement in the first 180 days if Donald Trump wins. So here's a taste of what they'll do. Cut Social Security and Medicare, let employers stop paying overtime, strip health care protections for people with pre-existing conditions, allow the government to monitor pregnancies and prosecute people if they miscarry. That's why I wanted you to hear it. replace thousands of federal workers with ideologues, dismantle civil rights protections, end efforts to combat climate change, cut taxes for the wealthy, and weaponize the National Labor Relations Board against workers. Their plans for public education are equally draconian. Title I, gone. Swelling class sizes and eliminating paraprofessionals. Educators and public librarians could have to register as sex offenders if they disseminate anything the Heritage Foundation considers pornographic. And their holy grail, limitless funding for private and religious schools, leading to the end of the separation of church and state and the end of public education as we know it. It's all in there. And many of Trump's acolytes have been responsible for writing it. It's a path to autocracy. These extremists see it as a zero-sum game. To seize power, they must subvert ours. So, they remake the judiciary, roll back freedoms, reduce taxes on the wealthy, rig democracy, wreck public education, and restrict unions. Why? Because we, the people, stand in their way. The president of Heritage Foundation publicly warned, and I quote, "We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be." An explicit threat of violence. This, my friends, is the stuff of demagogues and dictators, not democracies. And tragically, our nation's highest court has become a dangerous tool in this regard. The last 2 years, the extremist activist majority on the court has rewritten the Constitution, thrown out long-settled precedents, scrapped environmental protections, eliminated the deference given to science and expertise while granting corporations new powers over us, and stripped individual rights, including women's freedom to make one of life's most personal and significant decisions. And now, the extremist majority on the court has granted presidents near total immunity and almost limitless powers, creating a rule of one, not a rule of law. They've laid the legal foundation for American autocracy. And again, I know this speech is long, but let me dwell on this for a minute. There is no presidential immunity clause in the Constitution. It's pretty much the point of the founding of our country, the rejection of a monarch, the rejection of imperial rule. Yet the extremist majority on the court fabricated out of whole cloth a power of kings expressly not granted by the founders. This is the moment we are in, and the moment when our nation must make a decision of enormous, lasting consequence. Who will hold the office of president, the office that the Supreme Court now says is above the law? So, to restate the obvious, we're in unprecedented times. Joe Biden has been incredibly effective at moving the country forward, and he's been a great president. But he's passing the baton, and we have to respect his decision. And because of the changed circumstance, the AFT Executive Council met last night, and we, subject to your vote, your ratification, we endorse Kamala Harris for President of the United States. Remember, it's subject to your ratification. Vice President Harris has fought alongside Joe Biden to deliver historic accomplishments and create a better life for all Americans. She has a record of fighting for us, fighting to lower the costs we pay, fighting for reproductive rights, fighting for worker empowerment, fighting to keep communities safe from gun violence. And as President Biden said in his endorsement of Vice President Harris, she has his full support to be the Democratic nominee for president. So, much has been changing, but we know one thing: Donald Trump is still Donald Trump. This will be a choice between two value systems, and only one lifts up freedom, democracy, pluralism, and shared prosperity. And it's a choice between two records. So let's do a little factual compare and contrast. Take the economy. Donald Trump passed trillions in tax breaks for corporations and for the richest Americans, driving up the national debt by $7 trillion during his administration. 3 million Americans lost their jobs over the course of his presidency. Herbert Hoover had the worst record of job loss in modern history until Donald Trump. Trump left his successor a country in crisis and chaos, with soaring inflation and an economy in freefall. Do we all remember that? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris turned it around. They stabilized schools, saved pensions for hundreds and thousands of retired union workers, and remade the economy. They invested in our country's future, in our roads, our bridges, our ports, our electrical grid, our manufacturing sector, and yes, our schools, more than any administration in my lifetime. They passed the child tax credit, which cut child poverty in half. They got the Inflation Reduction Act passed, the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed, CHIPS, and they helped veterans sickened by burn pits. From insulin to junk fees, to student debt relief, this administration is combating corporate greed. Medicare can now negotiate lower prescription drug prices for seniors, and the cost of insulin is capped at $35 per month. And instead of slipping into a recession, which was widely predicted, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris led our country through the COVID crisis to the strongest economic recovery in our lifetimes. 15 million new jobs and inflation down from 9 to 3%. I'll give you another example, and our rural communities in this room know this. Donald Trump promised to revitalize America's left-behind counties almost as often as he promised Infrastructure Week. It took the Biden-Harris administration to catalyze their comeback. In the last 3 years, these distressed areas have added jobs and new businesses at the fastest pace in decades. Yes, the price of bacon is too damn high. Yes, Americans are still struggling with higher prices, and more must be done on childcare, on housing, gas prices, grocery prices. But let me ask you, do we really believe what Donald Trump would do? Who do we really believe will take on the corporations that are gouging consumers on just about everything while raking in record profits? Harris. Say it again. Harris. Our planet is boiling, but Donald Trump offered oil company execs a deal. He'd scrap climate laws if they donated $1 billion to his campaign. The Biden-Harris administration has taken more action to combat climate change than any in history. Donald Trump takes credit for overturning the constitutional right to make reproductive decisions. Kamala Harris has led the fight to reinstate Roe v. Wade. Donald Trump bragged to members of the NRA that he did nothing to curb guns during his presidency. The Biden-Harris administration advanced the most significant gun safety legislation in decades. And on education, Donald Trump's education agenda is Betsy DeVos 2.0, stripping civil rights diverting funding from public schools to vouchers, and essentially ending public education as we know it. The Biden and Harris administration, as I've said before, has made record investments in public education, including investing in teachers and school staff, community schools, HBCUs, and other colleges, and career and tech education. Donald Trump stacked the National Labor Relations Board with anti-worker, anti-union members. President Biden is the first president to walk a picket line, and the Biden-Harris administration vigorously defends workers' rights to organize and bargain collectively. Trump sides with dictators and strongmen. He's callously called for Israel to, quote, finish what they started in Gaza. President Biden, joined by Vice President Harris, has rebuilt our international coalitions and have worked tirelessly for peace and for a ceasefire to that particular war. And what are their visions for the country? Donald Trump wants to help himself and his friends, expand his tax cut for the wealthy, deport millions of immigrants, and roll back all the Biden-Harris initiatives, starting with clean energy. Kamala Harris wants to improve people's lives, expand the Affordable Care Act, lower drug prices, make child care and housing more affordable, raise wages and raise the corporate tax rate, and make our country better for everyone. Donald Trump stokes conflict. I prayed that this near-death experience changed him. But the Republican National Convention demonstrated the opposite. As president, he wanted to use his official powers to have Black Lives Matter protesters shot. He said the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff should be executed. He sought to overturn the results of the election he lost. He promises retribution if he is returned to the White House and a bloodbath if he is not. And the Supreme Court has given him a blank check to do all of this. And then there's Trump's lying. Dozens in the debate, more than 3,000 lies during his presidency. From calling unflattering reports about him fake news to the big lie that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from him. Trump is not a blowhard mouthing off. He is a cunning master manipulator. Does anyone in this room doubt that if Donald Trump is given a choice between what is good for him and what is good for working families, which he would choose? Or that he would use the nearly unlimited powers the Supreme Court has granted him in dangerous ways? If your answer is the same as mine, then this election is not only the most important in our lifetimes, but in our children's and our grandchildren's lifetimes. It's going to be tough. The presidential election, the Senate election, the House election, every day matters. And yes, we must vote, but we must do more. In this world of alternative facts and disinformation, your voice, your activism is essential. You are trusted. You are beloved because you make a difference in the lives of others. Talk to your coworkers. Talk to your neighbors. Knock on doors. Write postcards. Put out the long sign. Slap on the bumper sticker. No one can do everything, but we can all do something. We can't risk regretting we didn't do more. There's a new musical on Broadway called Suffs. Anyone see it? It's about the movement to win women's right to vote. The lyrics from one of the songs called Keep Marching have been stuck in my head. Don't worry, I'm not singing it. Progress is possible, not guaranteed. It will only be made if we keep marching. The future demands that we fight for it now. It will only be ours if we keep marching. So, my friends, what will that future be? The best of times? The worst of times? It's still in our power to shape it. Progress is possible. So cast fear and despair aside for a moment and imagine what progress looks like. Imagine a country where a living wage is the norm, where families can afford decent housing, childcare, a vacation every once in a while, and people can retire with dignity. Imagine a country where all kids can be kids and have childhoods full of joy, learning, and adventure, where their bellies are full of nutritious food, they feel safe, and we prioritize their well-being. Imagine a country where every school is a school where educators want to teach, where parents want to send their kids, and where kids are excited to learn. Imagine a country where healthcare is a right, hospitals focus on patients over profits, and nurses and doctors and technicians are treated like the heroes they are, and so are bus drivers, teachers, and public employees. Imagine a country where technology and AI are used for progress, not for disinformation or to replace good jobs. Imagine a country where hate has no harbor and freedom rings, the freedom to vote, to live, to breathe, the freedom to marry, the freedom for families to make reproductive choices, the freedom to read, the freedom to teach, and the freedom to join a union. We are at a historic juncture. Our nation has made great progress because we organized and fought and marched and voted. The November elections will determine which path we take as a nation. Progress is indeed possible, but so is the eradication of the rights and freedoms we hold dear. Historians like Timothy Snyder and Heather Cox Richardson, who study threats to democracy and how fascists come to power, conclude that it is seldom a dramatic event or attack that lets fascism in the door. The violence comes later, after they are voted in. Voting is still our best defense against tyranny and fascism, and it's our best offense to create the better future we dream of and march for. Progress is possible, but not guaranteed. When the history books are written about this moment, let them record that we the people united, mobilized, and voted down this existential threat to democracy and freedom, that we continued the march for progress, that we laid the foundation for a better future, and that we sought to create a more perfect union. Progress is possible. Keep marching.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Union Talk. Remember to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and tune in every other week for a new episode. Thank you, be safe, and be well.